The world is sustained by the just people in it. The light of justice and mercy has been passed on to us. Let us pass that light to our children, to each other, and to the peoples of this world. Be this our understanding of covenant, to be a beacon of justice and mercy, and let our chalice represent that beacon in the world.
Well, good morning and welcome, everyone. I'm Reverend Amy Petrie Shaw. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. And I'm speaking to you from land that's the traditional territory of the indigenous Iowa people. Whenever you hear a land acknowledgement, please consider donating $1 or more to programs and services created by or supporting local indigenous people. We ask that you just keep your microphones muted during the service, and after the service, you're welcome to turn them on and join us in our breakout rooms. Today's a joyful day. It's our water gathering service, our homecoming service, the day we come back together from wherever we've traveled over the summer, the day we return to community and recommit to pouring ourselves out in support of one another. Today's the day we turn toward hope and possibility of change and a new church year. And we're going to begin with words adapted from a piece called On Turning by Rabbi Jack Reimer, because today is also heading us toward the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur. Now is the time for turning. The leaves are beginning to turn from green to red and orange. The birds are beginning to turn and are heading once more toward the south. The animals are beginning to turn to storing their food for the winter. For leaves and birds and animals, turning comes instinctively, but for us, it does not come so easily. It takes an act of will for us to make a turn. It means breaking with old habits. It means admitting that we've been wrong. This is never easy. It means losing face. It means starting all over again. It's always painful. It means saying, I'm sorry. But it also means recognizing that we have the ability to change. These things are hard to do, but unless we turn, we'll be trapped forever in yesterday's ways. Spirit of life, help us to turn from callousness to sensitivity, from hostility to love, from pettiness to purpose, from envy to contentment, from carelessness to discipline, from fear to faith. Turn us around, mystery unnamed, and bring us back toward wonder. Revive our lives as at the beginning and turn us toward each other. Turn us toward each other, because in isolation there is no life. Come and let us celebrate here together.
Good morning. My name is Birch Spick. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I'm your celebrant for this morning's service, and I'm glad you're joining us here today. Whether you're here for the hour, a lifetime, or somewhere in between, thank you for joining us in this community that grows ethically and spiritually, serves justly, and loves radically. Our gathering song this morning is 389, Gathered Here. The words will be on the screen, so please keep your mics muted and sing along at home. We will sing this chant through 3 times.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour. Gathered here in one strong body. Gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour. Gathered here in one strong body. Gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near.
Thank you so much, Bruce and Barb. Thank you, Birch. Our offering words this morning are done with my normal seriousness because giving should never hurt. The pastor of a small church was explaining to a colleague how they had managed to make their church solvent in a particularly difficult year. For a long time, I prayed really hard to God to send us some money, he said. But then I realized the Lord doesn't work that way. So what did you do? His UU colleague asked, looking around at the well-decorated church. You certainly seem to be doing okay. Oh, that was easy, the first minister said. Once I realized that the Lord didn't hand out cash, I just robbed a bank and prayed like heck for forgiveness. As I am not good at larceny, the morning offering will now be given and received through the link in the chat. 1/2 of this electronic plate goes to our internal social justice programs, and 1/2 to our Faith in Action partners, Knock and Drop and Just Voices. Thank each and every one of you for all of the gifts of time and talent and treasure that you bring to this community. We couldn't keep doing it without you, because church is all about community. We say this every week. We are a community of human hands and human hearts, and we come together to share our laughter and our tears and to bear witness and minister to one another as we struggle with life's sorrows and we celebrate life's joys. This week, may we hold in our thoughts and our prayers the Afghani people. May we hold all those around our country who've struggled with the storms, with the flooding. May we hold the Baton Rouge, Louisiana UU Church, whose people have been so hard hit by the storms. Let us share together now the names of anyone else we know who could use some special care and attention this week. As we type their names in the chat, may the love of this community hold them all.
That says Rose Stewart. I'm not doing the chat.
May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world. May the work of our hands and our hearts support, aid, and comfort all those who hunger or thirst for food or water, justice or freedom. May we never look away when we're needed. May those who are grieving be comforted. May you be comforted. May those who are tired find rest. May you find rest. May the broken places be healed. May you be healed. And may those who are filled with joy and laughter be abundant. Every week we light 3 real or virtual candles together, one for the joys and the sorrows that we've shared here, one for the names that we've written, and one last candle for all the joys and all of the sorrows which are deeply held but remain unspoken here today.
Comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul.
Our first reading this morning is You Can Talk, a poem by Alice Walker. It reminds us that forgiveness is not just something divinely granted, but also something which we receive as a gift of our divine humanity. When we return to this place, we are welcomed in all our perfect imperfections. No matter where you have traveled, there is a balm here for you to wash away the things that make your heart heavy. You can talk about the balm in Gilead, but what about the balm right here? What about the healing of the wounded heart when someone you have harmed gleefully embraces you?
draw the circle wide. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide.
That was our own UU singers led by Karen Kramer doing Draw the Circle Wide. Our meditation this morning is a litany of atonement by Rob Eller Isaac. It's a reminder that no matter what's happened this past year, you've come back to this place, and now as good a time as any to forgive yourself, to forgive others, to begin again in love, to feel yourself washed clean. It's time to use the water to wash away the weight of all offenses, real and perceived. So here's the litany of atonement. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference, we forgive ourselves and each other, and we begin again in love. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible, we forgive ourselves and others, and we begin again in love. For each time that we've struck out in anger without just cause, we forgive ourselves and each other, and we begin again in love. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit, we forgive ourselves and each other, and we begin again in love. For losing sight of our unity, we forgive ourselves and each other, and we begin again in love. For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone, we forgive ourselves and each other, and we begin again in love. For these and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness, we forgive ourselves and each other, and we begin again in love. Holding those images in mind, please join me in one silent minute of thought, meditation, or prayer.
Our second reading is The Fountain by Denise Levertov. Don't say there is no water to solace the dryness at our hearts. I have seen the fountain springing out of the rock wall and you drinking there. And I too, before your eyes, found footholds and climbed to drink the cool water. The woman of that place, shading her eyes, frowned as she watched, but not because she grudged the water, only because she was waiting to see we drank our fill and were refreshed. Don't say there is no water. The fountain is there among its scalloped green and gray stones. It is still there and always there, with its quiet song and strange power to spring in us, up and out through the rock. Our centering song today is number 100, Peace Like a River. We'll sing verses 1 through 3, and the words are on the screen.
I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my
Thank you so much, Barb, and thank you, Bruce. That was lovely. I'm going to ask now, for those of you who are in the church, there is a bowl of water up on the stage. It is the combined waters gathered from our previous years, plus the waters that were dropped off yesterday. I invite you now, if you've brought water and you have not yet brought it forward, you're welcome to come up and bring it up while I'm doing the sermon or during the final hymns. I believe there also has symbolic water there if you did not bring any but want to add some to the common container. And I will be picking that up on Tuesday and collecting that so that our water continues in an unbroken line. Hopefully, this will be the last year that we have water communion outside the building. There's a poem that I read as I was beginning to write my sermon, and it really struck home with me right now. In his poem, I have returned to the sea. Mark Nepo writes this: I've returned to the sea as so many times I have returned to the silence of the womb to hear my purpose again. And I've returned to love like a sea whose storms have almost drowned me, because I swear it's not the sea that caused us the storm. When all is said and done or left undone, I need the sea, the silence, the womb, the love, and failing to find them is when I lose my way. I must wait till I am broken, till my stubbornness is cracked, till I'm forced to start over, not knowing what I want or need. Because when things break open, there is a hold inside the break that whispers softness, though it's hard to hear, so loud is our breaking. But in that break is the chrysalis of the world never finished. What a great phrase, the chrysalis of the world. In that break is the chrysalis of the world never finished, waiting to be carried wetly from living thing to living thing. All for the remote and blessed chance that we might touch the source and burst into our birthright of aliveness that rides our small lives with no care for our small names, the way that pollen rides the rumps of bees from flower to flower, all for the freshness of beginning again. And I stopped to think about that a lot, because one of the largest complaints that we hear about water communion is that it's an annual travelogue. We use it as a way for people to get together and say, this is what I did on my summer vacation. Here's where I went. And in some cases, less nicely, here's all the expensive, wonderful places that I went that you didn't get to go to. It's a serious complaint that ministers hear about water communion. But there's more to it than that. At its simplest, water communion is all about beginning again. At its simplest, it's about coming back together and being whole again as a community, as a person. It's about being welcomed home, no matter where you've been or what you've done. It's about pouring out our hearts together. It's about being whole together. And just for a minute, I want you to think about a china plate. And I know that's not a water metaphor, but bear with me. If you take a china plate, a nice, beautiful floral china plate, and you smash it on the ground, and you gather up all the pieces, even the tiny ones that are too small to see almost, you gather them all up again, and you look at it and you tell it, I'm sorry. And you really mean that. You mean it with every fiber of your being. Does it make a difference to that plate? Still smashed and broken in your hands? Today we're going to talk about breaking and healing and homecoming. And because I'm me, we're also going to talk about burritos and wolves and kintsugi, but it wouldn't be one of my sermons if it wasn't a little odd. There's been a lot of conversation over the last 10 years about where Unitarian Universalism falls on the religious spectrum. And you hear everything. We're Protestant, we're post-Protestant, we're post-Christian, we're post-modern, we're a religion, we're a movement, we're a nuisance. You hear it all. We're a lot of things. What we're not particularly good about is talking about going away and coming back again. We're not good at talking about things that other churches call sin. We're not good at talking about moving in and out of covenant. The closest thing we have to that is water communion, water gathering, where we all come back together after a summer where we probably missed church more than we attended. That's where that tradition came from, because nobody went to church in the summer. But it made me start thinking about how we approach breaking apart and being made whole again as a community, as people, and how alike the Jewish Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and our water communion, how alike they really could be. Other religions have some kind of thought about humans and error or sin. Christianity has dogma that says that humans are inherently sinful for some branches, and that because the first people screwed up somehow, we're all born needing to be cleaned. And they answered that problem by having a Messiah that washes away all the sin that people are born with, and that we add on later. It's called substitutionary atonement. That sounds very big and scary, but what it really means is that some kind of God provided people with the only sacrifice big enough to wash everything clean. Now, for some of us, that makes sense. And for some of us, it's like, no. We understand Jesus's crucifixion and suffering and death as the natural end of a radical young rabbi at the time and in the political system where he lived. His life and death had great meaning, but are not there to erase any wrongs. Mainstream Christianity has rituals around forgiveness, even this substitutionary atonement. You don't just get it. You have to say things or do things. The one some of you may have heard is the Lord's Prayer from the Christian book of Matthew. Everything about our Father who art in heaven, all the way through. Forgive us this day our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation. The forgiveness is there, but you have to ask for it. And it's like our broken plate. Just saying the words doesn't make it better. You have to believe in that. Well, most of us don't believe in that. Judaism also recognizes atonement. And last week I talked about Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, the time when the year was done and you were about ready to go, and Yom Kippur comes 10 days later. It's the day when you forgive because the year's over, and you make it possible for others to forgive you. It's very human. It's the day when you start to atone for whatever you've done wrong, and you accept the atonement of others, the day when you're made whole again. It's the day when you metaphorically come home to your natural state, which is being whole. And they've got something there with that, something that we need. something that we can use no matter what we believe in, if we believe in a God or spirit of humanity or a mother goddess or nothing at all. This gives us a way to deal with our sins, our errors, everything we've done wrong this year. These offenses against our belief that everybody makes, without violating our belief in the individual worth and dignity of each person. And it's funny, as I'm writing the sermon and thinking about forgiveness and wholeness, I remembered when Chipotle Mexican Grill opened near me, and it's been about 20 years now since the first one got anywhere near me. So here come the burritos. Get ready for this. But about 20 years ago, the first Chipotle showed up. I was in Ohio then. And for those of you who may not be familiar with that chain, they specialize in huge burritos. These burritos are big, like wrap it in a blanket and call it a newborn big. It was the first burrito anyone had ever seen this size. Most people were used to Taco Bell, something this big, or the little frozen ones you can get in the store that kind of sit in your hand about 4 inches long. We'd never seen anything like this. And so it very quickly became a thing for some of the really athletic guys that I worked with to go up and order a burrito with double meat, chips, and salsa, and then eat the whole thing. It's kind of a contest between a couple of them. And so at least once a week, this really slender marathon runner from my office would do his noontime laps around the building, and then he would run the 1.5 miles up to Chipotle, get his food, and run back. And he'd sit and eat with us. And it would be like watching wolves on National Geographic. Pounds of meat just disappearing in this man's mouth. And by the time he stood up, this healthy, athletic guy without an ounce of fat on him, he had this belly pushing out against his waistband. He was literally bulging with food, weighed down by whatever he had eaten. And he couldn't run after lunch on those days. For 2 or 3 or 4 hours, he was pregnant with food. All that weight sitting in his gut. And then it would digest, and by the next day, he'd be himself again. Food does digest quickly. If you make an edible indiscretion, all you have to do is wait a few hours or a day and it will be gone. But when our lives get too full, too weighted down, the digestion of that takes a little more effort. Our burritos, our lives are stuffed full of COVID and jobs and families, friends, co-workers. They're sauced all over with social media and spiced up with the news and the Taliban and the Middle East and storms and crime and punishment and politics and sex. And day after day, we do our best to eat everything that life throws at us. But the world is hectic, and sometimes we take bite after bite after bite of life until we feel like wolves at a kill, staggering away with our bellies dragging the ground, too weighted down to move anymore. There's an old children's story about a monkey who sees a jar full of goodies filled with these nuts, and he pushes his hand into the jar to grab a handful. And he grabs as much as he can hold, but when he goes to pull his hand out, it won't fit through the jar without letting go. And since he's not willing to let go, that poor monkey sits there and cries, unable to enjoy even one bite. Relaxing our fists and letting go of some of our treasure is hard, but it's the only way to enjoy any of it. Recognizing Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur isn't about time of year, particularly. Doesn't matter when you recognize them, as long as you do it about the same time. Water communion is fine, because it marks the end of the old, the time when you stop eating the burrito, the time when you recognize you can't withdraw your hand, the time when you recognize you're holding all the pieces of the plate, it's as broken or as fixed as it's getting, and you reclaim the power to let go, to return home, to come back to wholeness. It's time to digest the burrito. When you are ready, after you've finished eating, there is Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. The day when you empty yourself of the weight you've been carrying, it digests and goes away. All of the slights and the screw-ups of your life over this past year. Some big, some small. It's the day when you come back to yourself. The day you return to being fully present. The day you come back to community. The day when you say, I'm sorry, and I forgive you, and will you forgive me? We all screw up. We're all imperfect. We have no capacity for absolute perfection. People wander around. They take time off. Sometimes they get lost. Sometimes they get confused. We get to start over. It doesn't matter what belief system you're working with. For a Christian who believes that Jesus' suffering and death atone, this is the time of year to contemplate where you've fallen short of your personal beliefs, to recognize you're forgiven through grace and resolve to start again. For a Buddhist, this is a time for mindful contemplation of the past year's unskillful or unwholesome acts. It's a place to begin seeking greater wisdom. For a Wiccan, you might choose to recognize the turning of the wheel on one of the greater sabbats. For a humanist, this might be the time for thoughtful assessment of how you are living up to your stated values. The specifics don't matter. One of the things that does matter is willingness to both forgive and be forgiven for those moments this past year when things didn't turn out the way they should have. But that's often where the problems start, when I clench my fists nice and tight and hold on to the stuff that I've grabbed. When I convince myself that I don't deserve forgiveness, or when I think I don't get to say if I should be forgiven. Causes problems when I look at other people and say they don't deserve forgiveness. I don't want to let go of this. It doesn't work that way. I can keep on punishing myself. You can punish yourself, but you can't control how the people you've wounded feel. If you're sorry for what you've done this past year when you've screwed up, if you recognize that you broke your vows to yourself and to your world, and you resolve to do better to the best of your ability, that is enough. You can try to punish others for what they've done to you. You can hold hatred and anger, and then what? You are hate and anger filled, and the person who hurt you is still themselves. Forgiveness of others isn't about whether or not they deserve it. It's about releasing their hold on your life. The burrito weighed you down, you digested, it's gone. You pick up the plate you broke, you collect every shard, you say you're sorry. That's like Rosh Hashanah. But taking it a step further, in Japan, there's an art form called kintsugi, the art of repairing with gold. You take that broken plate, you take that broken life, you take that disconnect from community, You take that plate and you use pure gold to form seams everywhere it's broken. You don't try to hide the damage, but you heal the cracks with something more precious. When you're done, it's a priceless work of art and it's whole again. That is Yom Kippur. That is water communion. That's that moment when you pour out your life and you have others pour into you, and you are whole. Amen.
Though we extinguish this light, carry with you the flame of creation, which makes the broken whole again. In community, may you always find wholeness. Our final song today is 347, Gather the Spirit.
Gather the Spirit, harness the power of separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscious refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit, growing in awe, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again.
The service has ended and your service in the world begins again. Peace, Ashe, and may it be so.